She was never lost, just buried, beneath the noise, the rules, and the quiet lessons that taught her it was safer to be less. Less loud, less needy, less honest. She learned when to smile, when to soften her voice, when to read the room before listening to herself. Not because she was broken, but because she was clever, because she was paying attention to what kept her safe. And now, there's nothing to fix, nothing to push through, nothing to become, just something to remember. This is the moment she's allowed back into her body, back into her truth, back into herself. She isn't gone. She never was. She is here. Welcome. If you're new here, I'm really glad you found your way into this space. And if you've been with me since Let's Talk People Pleasing, thank you for coming with me into this next podcast era, should we say. This isn't a hard pivot, and as I've said previously, it's not a sudden reinvention or rebrand. If anything, it's a continuation of a remembering, because people pleasing was never the whole story. It was the surface. It was the often visible parts and manifestation of something much deeper. And depth is what I'm going to lean into with this. What I know through my clinical expertise and personal experience is how helpful it is to go deeper, to reach what lives underneath it. Lack of safety, self-worth, self-acceptance, self-trust, the parts of us that learned it wasn't safe to be fully ourselves. And this feels especially important to name as we come to the end of a year and head into a new one. Because for so many years, for me, like January used to mean one thing. It would be a brand new notebook or a new planner, a fresh start. I'd write out all my intentions, my resolutions, like, goals, 5 gym sessions a week, 2 litres of water a day, daily meditation, gratitude lists, a calmer, better, like the best version of me that I wanted. And because I was very all or nothing, I'd usually manage about a week, if that. And then life would happen, I'd fall off the plan, and instead of feeling hopeful, I'd feel worse, like I'd failed again to improve myself, like there was something wrong with me. And what I didn't realise then is that I wasn't failing at discipline or motivation. It wasn't an issue of lack of willpower, even though it felt like it. It was the fact I was striving for more. I was trying to become someone new instead of listening to who I already was. And that's really what this podcast is about as well. So much of my work, and maybe yours in terms of learning about yourself or, becoming self-aware or going on a personal journey or whatever you want to call it, it's been about understanding where all of this starts, this need to fit into the cultural narratives that define what the best version of ourselves looks like. The messages we absorbed growing up, spoken or unspoken, from the systems we had to navigate and often still navigate, that it's, safer to not rock the boat, that being sensitive is inconvenient or too much, that being loud, emotional, needy, deep or different makes things harder for others and therefore we shouldn't be. Maybe you learn to fawn, to appease, to shapeshift, to read the room before speaking. Not because there was something wrong with you, but because somewhere along the way, little you, that little girl who still lives inside you remembering, she worked out what kept the peace. And I want to pause here because this matters. This wasn't weakness. This was nervous system wiring designed for surviving. And that was clever of her, clever of her nervous system. And that's the thing, your nervous system was paying attention. It learned what reduced risk, what kept connection, what avoided fallout, and understanding that, like really understanding that, how that works, the neurobiology of everything as well. It's so powerful because it shifts the question from what's wrong with me to what happened that made this make sense. From criticism to curiosity. But here's the part I want to name more clearly now as well. Even when we get all this, like even when we understand our patterns or how the nervous system works, even when we've done so much work on ourselves, read the books, listened to the podcasts, sometimes our bodies still don't feel safe. And you might know logically that it's okay to set boundaries. You might understand exactly where your people-pleasing comes from. You might even have processed old memories in therapy. And yet, Your body still tightens, your stomach still flips, your chest still feels on edge at times. And you end up wondering, like, why am I like this? Why is it still so hard? What's wrong with me? And that's not always because the past hasn't been resolved enough or you need to try harder at all. You're probably trying very hard, I imagine. Sometimes it's because the present is still asking the same things of yourself as well. And that's something I've not fully touched on previously. And I really want to through this to include that as well. Because we're navigating a world that keeps nervous systems on high alert. Political tension, economic uncertainty, constant comparison, this sort of social media that drives that as well, this pressure to perform and to be enough for everyone. And then we're told as well to be ourselves, just be confident, be yourself, put yourself out there like it's easy. But some environments and systems within society and culture, they don't actually facilitate that. They don't facilitate authenticity. We're told to embrace who we are, but systems punish difference. We're told to express our needs, but some relationships reward compliance and quiet, or feel unsafe if we ask for what we need or want. We live in a world that tells women to speak up, but not too loud, to be confident, but not intimidating, to be themselves, but not like that. So when you feel your truth, but you can't live it safely in a particular context, that's not you failing. That might be discernment. Why do I still feel anxious even though I've done so much work? Why do I still struggle to speak up at work even though I know rationally I have something worth saying? Why do I still people please in certain relationships even though I tell my mates it's okay to say no at something? What's wrong with me? And the answer is nothing. You don't need to be someone else. You might not believe that yet, but nothing is wrong with you. Your body might be responding from memory, or it might be responding to what's actually happening now in your environment. And it might be a bit of both. But either way, it's trying to keep you safe. Anxiety isn't always irrational. Sometimes it's information. It's your nervous system asking, is this safe? Will there be consequences? Will I be punished, rejected, or shamed here? And that isn't about blame, because power doesn't require malice to be real, and power exists all around us. Impact doesn't require intent. Your nervous system isn't interested in who's at fault. It's interested in what feels safe and what doesn't. So I want to be really clear about, what she is here and like this space is all about and what it isn't about. Because it's not about forcing authenticity into unsafe places. It's not about pushing through fear regardless. It's not about working against your nervous system. It's not about telling yourself you should feel confident by now. You've done all that work. You've been challenging your thoughts. You've been faking it till you make it. You've putting yourself out there. She is here is about understanding what shaped you. It's about recognizing what you're responding to right now. It's about learning how to belong to yourself deeply enough to know the difference. And sometimes that can mean that we adapt consciously because we know who we are and we know what we need to do within certain environments and with certain people. We might mask parts of ourselves because we're responding to the environment in an appropriate way. And sometimes it means we realise the cost of adapting is too high and we want to honour what we want and need. Self-betrayal isn't the same as choosing to adapt when you know who you are. When you belong to yourself, you don't confuse survival with identity. Authenticity isn't about showing every part of yourself everywhere. It's about grounded choice and alignment. It's learning to check in with yourself before asking 5 other people what they think, which is something I used to do before making a decision because I was so indecisive. It's getting to a stage where you know and listen to your internal compass and trust it. And as this podcast unfolds, let's talk about and explore things like people pleasing in more depth or masking. Let's talk about trauma and nervous systems and neurodivergence. Let's talk about power, relationships, workplace culture, society, how the environment influences us and our responses. Let's go deep. Let's talk about the inner child. Let's talk about little you, what she learned growing up, what makes her feel unsafe now. Let's talk about when she might fight for your attention. And let's talk about how you can remember her and reconnect with her and let her know that she's safe now, if she is safe now. Let's talk about safety, what it actually looks like in real life and what it feels like in your body and your nervous system. And and I want to talk more about why mainstream advice can often leave you feeling worse, not better. Because these clickbaity empowerment quotes or motivational slogans that we're bombarded with within society, within our cultural narratives and social media, they often feed into this idea that it's something about us that needs fixing, that we need to do better, we need to try harder, that it's an idea that we've not got enough willpower or discipline somehow to work our way through these struggles that we're having. And yet, there's so much complexity around that doesn't get included. And get in touch and let me know if there is specific stuff that you do struggle with or that you find hard that you want more insight in. And I mean, like that you want more depth about, or that you're not sure about, or you've been trying a certain thing and it's not, for want of a better word, working. Let me know and I'll be sure to cover it. And if you like the sound of it, or if this resonates, I'd love for you to follow along for more episodes. There'll be psychology here and real science, but not in a cold or jargony way, like in a relatable, honest way. And there'll also be spoken word poetry along the way, because some things need to be felt, not just understood. And this is a space for nuance, for complexity, for truth without pressure, for reality, because reconnecting with that little girl who was taught to be less and remembering who you were, it doesn't happen through insight alone. It happens when truth is allowed to settle in the body and when you feel safe enough to let it land. So I just want to leave you with a few spoken words to let this land. You don't have to be braver, louder, better, someone you're not. You don't have to tear the mask off or bleed your truth in rooms that never learned how to hold it. This was never about exposure, it was about permission. Permission to listen inward, to notice what tightens and what softens, to feel the difference between surviving and choosing. Some days remembering looks like rest. Some days it looks like saying no. Some days it's staying quiet because your body says not today, and that's okay. And some days it looks like letting yourself be seen without apology or armor or proof. That's not contradiction, that's discernment. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're not failing at healing. You're learning the rhythm of safety, the pace of trust, the quiet strength of staying with yourself instead of rushing ahead. And the girl you once were, the one who learned to be less to belong. She doesn't need rescuing, she doesn't need fixing, she just needs you to keep showing up. Because she was never gone, she was waiting. And now you're listening. She is here.